Hey, welcome everybody to Keep the Change. I hope you're having a beautiful day and a beautiful week. I'm Bart Nolenberger, and I get to hang out today with a gentleman that I consider an absolute friend. I've known him since about 2012 as a member of the John Maxwell team. He has been elite in his leadership with the John Maxwell team. And now on Tuesdays on the mentorship program part of the John Maxwell team, this young man has just really poured into thousands of leaders all over the world. And he's also a mental health coach. He's a executive leadership, sales, performance coach. He's a speaker and a trainer. And he is his voice, as you'll see in a minute, is strong. But it's not just the essence of his voice, it's the what comes out of his voice. It's so powerful. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am excited because every time I have a podcast, I meet somebody at a whole new level. I'm excited to introduce everybody to Mark Mcauliffe. What's up, Mark?
Hey, Bart, thank you so much. Appreciate the intro there, and just my pleasure to be with you here today. And likewise, love what you're doing, love you, and all the things we've experienced and yet to experience. So it's great to be with you.
God bless you, brother. Hey, if you're not familiar with the John Maxwell team, it's a group of 46, maybe we'll say 43,000 people all over the country in 164 countries. And Mark was the guy that was pegged a couple of every twice a year. We have what's called an IMC, which is an International Maxwell Certification. And he has such influence that he would be in the center of the facility having a town hall right in the hallway, right, Mark? Yep. And your voice carried so much that people would just come in because they had to listen to what you had to say early in the morning. Not had to listen, got to listen. Let me reframe that. So, Mark, tell us a little bit about you, your journey, how you got to this place of being part of the John Maxwell team and all the other things that you're doing to make an impact in this world.
Yeah, I appreciate the John Maxwell team in many ways, and now it's evolved into the Maxwell leadership world and the certification team of Maxwell leadership as Mark has taken over the reins and leading that company. But there's the thing people ask me a lot is how did you join the team, and how I said I happen to know about it before you did. I didn't. Nothing magical about being a founding partner or anything else. I heard about it and I said yes before you. Other than that, it just kind of is what it is. But I tell everybody I joined the team because I thought John's name would open more doors in my coaching and consulting business, which it did. And thankfully so. But I stayed because of the people I met and the lessons in life that John taught that I applied, but the community of people such as yourself that I've been able to meet since 2011. It's the one organization that I belong to many that has remained a constant in my life. My wife's a certified member. My daughter's a certified member. My son isn't yet, but it really changed a lot of things about us. And as I was searching, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but I was searching as an executive leader for about 22 years. Had reached a level of success that many people would judge as successful. And frankly, it had a lot to do with position, title, and financial reward. I grew up, didn't have a lot of money. My mom's side of the family, Central Missouri, Tightwad, Missouri. It is a legitimate place, Tightwad, Missouri. Got a couple of dozen people still living there. And my dad was from South Boston and then Quincy, Massachusetts. And it was two different cultures of family that it was a tumultuous upbringing. And they separated, divorced. My dad was had some addiction issues, alcoholism, and a few other things. But is a great guy. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. And as a result, I got to go to work at a very, very young age. And as a matter of fact, we lied about my age to make money. And I realized, and I knew I didn't have money, and I knew we didn't have money, but my friends did. And I was just sharing this story the other night. I remember going over to a buddy's house. I won't say his name because I don't have permission to use it, but they had matching silverware, but it was gold plated silverware, and their plates had gold trim around them. And I came home and I just said, Mom, do you think there will ever be a day where we have matching silverware? I mean, we had the Smurf glasses from Hardee's and garage sale, you name it. It was all those things. But
NASCAR plastic cups.
Yeah, I mean, it was,
would say.
yeah. I mean, the program, and it was during that time that I just really kind of developed a mantra. Man, it's like, life where I'm at is not a happy place, and the people I love either die or they abandon me. So I never want to get married, never want to have kids, and as soon as I can move away from Missouri, I'll never move back. And became a very young leader at 22 years of age, bounced around the country, never thought that I would leave Federal Express at that point in time. I was living in San Francisco, and then they wanted me to move to Detroit, and I finally said no. And was recruited by several companies throughout the years, and a leader friend of mine took over for Bank of America, Northern California. And I pursued some cash, and I pursued an opportunity to make a lot of money, is what I thought was a lot of money. And then I got there, and the culture wasn't what I thought it was, even though we were trying to turn it around. And I was really asking myself, man, there's got to be more to this. Got to be more to this. And I was pursuing success, and I had a life event that happened, and I realized what I wanted was success and significance and ultimately fulfillment. And it had nothing to do. And now, don't get me wrong. Money is a very important thing to me. It gives me options, and it helps provide for my family. But I realized that if it was just that, I would never be happy. I'd never be satisfied, and I would always be settling for something else. But fortunately, I had an accident that got my attention, and started pursuing the success side, and then the significant side of what that really meant. And that led me to follow some of John's teaching in leadership, and then they started the team, and that was the rest is history. I mean, we've been here ever since. So.
It's interesting. Did you ever read Halftime by Bob Buford?
In 2007.
Yeah, I know I'm old. So
I left corporate America in 2008, but my senior pastor, a very dear friend of mine, he was one of my coaches on this. And he goes, dude, it sounds like you want to move from success to significance. I said, that's exactly right. You're brilliant. You read my mind. And then he turned around and grabbed Bob's book, and he goes, you need to read this. And it was key, vitally key in my final decision to leave corporate America and start my own company.
Wow. So you had an accident. You had something that was just a game changer to you. Is that correct? And
yeah.
It's at that point, it was a wake-up call that said, I can continue on this path I want to, or I can go on this path to really live a life of, as you said, significance. Is that what I heard?
Yeah. I was training for a triathlon. I was in Chico, California, and I was staying in a little rental unit, temporary living, as I was relocating and had decided to move from the Bay Area up to Chico. I was covering Northern California, parts of Oregon area, but I'd gone for a morning swim, and I was on the bike ride, and I remember about 24 miles of it. Or 23 miles at the 23 miles at the 24th miles where the accident took place. It was a hit and run, and lady heard it, called in an ambulance, and I woke up in the hospital and didn't know who I was, where I was. There was just a note. You've been hit. Here's the, conditions and what you're suffering from. And as I was recovering the next several hours, I had my admin at the point in time. I was unable to put on a suit, unable to really walk. And she brought over a bunch of poster boards and things of that nature. And I said, okay, what is it I really, really want? These never get married, never have kids, never move back to Missouri, all these mantras about success, they aren't working. And, you and I were talking the other day is, depending upon your faith, whatever you want to call it, I call it God, is God guides us by the feather, a 2x4, or a ton of bricks. And, I'm a thick-headed Irish guy, so he sent an F-250 to run me over. and got my attention. And it was then that I actually started to apply the principles that got me the goal setting, the successes in business to who am I, and who do I have to become in order to be, do, and have what I want out of life. And it was based on, 100% based upon getting run over.
Wow. Isn't it interesting that sometimes we need that smack to shift? I
Yeah.
for me, it was a drip, 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 and then getting fired. Right.
Yeah.
But it was just on this path to destruction that I was either going to, if I kept going, I was going to die.
Yeah.
And you almost died. And that was the wake up call that I don't want to live like this anymore. So tell us a little bit about your philosophy. Now you're a leadership coach. You also have been involved in the mortgage business as well. But tell us about your philosophy of leadership. And I'm going to do a little plug here for somebody you and I both know, because it's a book I've been reading recently. The reason I'm doing this plug is because I'm guessing what you're going to say to some extent. But the book is called Love Works, and by Joel Manby. And I've been in it every morning, Mark, as he looks for it. I've been in it every morning because it talks about leading like a Corinthians 2:13 leader. And, I'm leading a volunteer organization with my wife. And the first part of that book talks about kind and patience and kindness. Dude, that is not easy for me. I'm a nice person, but I don't know if I'm really kind when it comes down to it. Like, I'm nice to my dog, but when he poops on the rug or eats my shoes, I'm not very kind. And it's really been a good book, a good read for me to figure out how to be better at being a 2 Corinthians leader. But tell us about your philosophy. Sorry to lead you on a path that might have been different than what you wanted to say.
No.
But how does that mirror who you are and how you lead nowadays?
Yeah, I think there's, when we take a look, and what I was looking for actually is I just took the shirt off because it was a movement. It was a movement shirt, but it's a Love Works. It's a program we have, and I changed shirts. I went to a darker color because hopefully it'll make me look slimmer on the video.
But look very slim there, my friend.
Love is in this. I didn't grow up in a household where that word was used.
Mm-hmm.
My mom would say, I love you, but I was like, that's what moms do that, but the power of love, and from an energy standpoint, that being the highest energy that we can come from, and hate and anger being the lowest forms, and everything in between. But the whole dynamic in 360-degree turn and then another 180, I'm one thought away from doing something stupid at any given moment, so that's why I have to rely on a greater power to help guide and navigate me and give me discernment there. But, my philosophies at this stage of my life, and you and I were talking about this. I just turned 57 last week, or almost 2 weeks ago now.
Happy birthday.
And thank you. And I'm at the same age now as when my dad was the same age my dad was when he died. And I started to reflect back on this whole success significant process is, wow, what if this was really it? I thought the car crash was it, which got me to turn, but if this was it, what would the difference that I really made? What would the legacy be? So my leadership philosophy, I think, is almost one and the same with my life philosophy. First and foremost, to be humble, hungry, and smart. Humble in the essence that we know that we're part of something greater than ourselves. To be smart, not only in continually learning and growing, but in the awareness of who we are and who we were created to be. And we want to be up to date on things so that we can help navigate and discern things. And then hungry. And the hunger piece is probably where I see one of the biggest gaps today. The humility side in leadership is almost non-existent in some of the roles that we have as leaders in the most probably public eye. And that concerns me greatly. But whenever you come back to the hungry is, what are we hungry for? Am I hungry for me things, or am I hungry for we things? And like I said, I should have turned off those notices. I apologize for that background.
No.
But you know, the am I going after this for me or we? And if I'm going after it for only me, it should be a do not pass, go collect $200. Number one. Number two is, if we're going to love and value people, back to the love word, what does that really look like? And if I'm going to look at my overall purpose in life, I stole it from John Maxwell, is that the people around me that know me best, I want them to love and respect me more than anybody else, because they know all of the things that I was.
Yes.
They know all of my hit. They know where the bones are. They know all of the trash.
Yeah.
And yet our conditions and circumstances don't define us. They give us defining moments that allow us to be platforms that we can go forward with, or we fall back into the waller of regret and revenge and resistance. And the 3 R's of our life can be toxic to us. But if I really had to boil it down to what are we, what am I doing here, is to be at this stage of the game in today's political environment, man, we got to be ambassadors of positivity. We got to be ambassadors of love and living life full out. Whatever that may mean for you, is what is living life full out? And am I settling? Am I hiding behind yesterday's successes? Am I hiding behind yesterday's impact or even yesterday's significance? Because it was a great lesson that my dad, we had a very tumultuous relationship. I'll never forget it. November 22nd, 1999, he calls me, which I knew right away something was wrong, because he didn't call me, never called me. And he had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Squamous cell had about 22 tumors in his lungs. It had metastasized to his brain, his back. It just ate him up. And he felt fine to the diagnosis, and he was given 90 days to live. And I fully expected that he was going to say, "Hey, man, I got 90 days. Meet me in Vegas. We're going to spend a boatload of money, have a party, and I'm going out with a bang." And instead, he goes, "I want to fight this, and I need your help." Mm-hmm. And the next day, he finally focused in on what he really, really wanted. And for the next 9 months, he beat 90 days. He didn't make it very long. But the next day, he stopped smoking and stopped drinking. No alcohol, no AA, no nothing. Boom. Here is my purpose. This is what I'm running towards. And for most of my life, I've been running from something. Now, we did get him AA. We got him a sponsor and a few other things to keep him on track. But he finally found his why. Wow. And in the last weeks of his life, in the final days of his life, I'll paraphrase it, but it basically boiled down to this. He goes, "Mark, this is what I do know. Every one of us has been given 90 days to live. Every morning that we wake up, we just don't know if it's day 1 or it's day 90. So you got to make every flipping one of these count." I mean, it was during that time period, 9 months, it's the first time he ever had a goal other than a new car or a date or somebody. But he actually wrote out a goal that he wanted to do. We started to make, it wasn't a bucket list, but it was a list of things he wanted to do. Who he wanted to be, the conversations he wanted to have. So I'm kind of off track here, I know, but the lesson behind that for me was, and it really came back in my birthday, September 28th. And what is it that happens? What do we do? What do we not do? And I had to reflect back to the accident. Once I figured out what I wanted, I said I'd never get married. 90 days after that, I was engaged. 9 months after that, we got married. I said I'd never move back to Missouri. A year later, we moved back. I said we'd never have kids. My wife can't have kids. I'm like, prayer was answered on that one. Yep, wrong again. Gonna adopt 2 of them, and we spent like 5 years trying to adopt internationally, and we adopted them 10 miles down the road. So it's the philosophy behind the leadership piece is, who am I? Whose am I? Love does work. Am I loving? Am I caring? Am I humble, hungry, and smart? And loving somebody doesn't mean that you're afraid to say what needs to be said. Loving somebody doesn't mean that we don't hold them accountable and set high expectations. And if they don't meet them, that we have to put them in a position that they can win, or we have to let them go, promote them to customer. But if I don't love you, I can let you sit there and waller in all sorts of things of your life. But if I love and respect you, and I believe in servant leadership, I have to be honest with you. Hey, what do you really want? Go home, take a look at your wife and kids, take a look at your husband and kids, take a look at your significant other. Tomorrow morning, if this isn't working out, I just need to know, are you in or not? And if you're in, far out. Here's the goals, here's the expectations, here's the accountability, here's the circumstances and conditions for failure to meet that, but I'm behind you 100%. Let's go. But if you're out, that's okay too. I'll introduce you to somebody. We'll try to find you the right spot, whether it's here or someplace else. But I can look them in the eye and say, I am doing this out of your best interest. I know it may not seem that way, but I really and truly am. And that is nothing like the leader I was at 22. The leader I was at 22 was, I'm going to dominate. You're either with me or against me. And if you're against me, I'm taking you out, steamrolling you, shooting you in the head, whatever it takes. I will win, period, end of story. And man, I just look back at that and, why didn't John come along 30 years before then? It was crazy how the whole dynamic happened.
Dude, we just rained nuggets there. I'm thinking about the first part you came up with was your mama, and she would say, I love you. My mom never said that. What she would do is take my floppy hair, which I still have a little bit, and she'd flip up and give me a kiss on the forehead, and she'd say, love to you. And Mark, in her elder years, I was a nightmare, narcissistic, jack, wrecked a lot of cars, drunk, went to recovery, still a lot of the same person. But man, the older I got, the more I loved her.
Yeah.
And I've told the story on this podcast about her and who she was as a leader. And the greatest, we talk about love and accountability. I'll never forget the greatest lesson she ever taught me was the day I called her and told her I quit another job because they were jacks. And she said to me, there you go again. And she never did that before. Before it was, she'd say, well, you'll do good. You'll do fine. She was always so loving. But the lesson I remember is that phone call. And you know what I did? I hung up on her. And I said, I love you. I didn't say I love you. I hung up on her. Called her 2 weeks later. And I said, oh my gosh, thank you. That was the greatest lesson you've ever taught me.
Right.
And that brought us so much closer together. And then also when I was able to teach her how to say, I love you.
Right.
And that to me, I respected her massively. Every day I miss her. But it's that moment when I got to say to her that when she would get me on the phone and say, I love you, and before she'd hang up, or she'd do this, Mark, can we pray?
Yeah.
Oh my
God. Look at that.
Yes.
Look at that.
That's, sometimes we have to lead up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she taught me how to do that. But thank you for that, because there's so many nuggets. You should write a book, dude. That's good nuggets.
Yeah.
And I think what happens when you and I figure out who we are, a lot of this stuff, it reveals itself, right?
Yes. Yeah.
There's a freedom in self-awareness. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And I'm so glad that you and your mom have those memories and those breakthroughs, right? I've had dear friends that have lost somebody overnight, and I would never wish cancer on anybody, but had my dad not had ever been diagnosed with that, we wouldn't have had that 9 months where we were on the same page.
Yeah.
And the forgiveness piece of that, and from a leadership perspective, self-leadership's the most important leadership we have. Yeah. And a lot of people think when I'm going to talk about leadership, they think I'm going to talk about corporate structure and who does what and the hierarchical positional pieces, the 5 levels of leadership and all that. I said, man, I want to take a step back. You got to, you in the face in the mirror is the first appointment. So when we go through that, the chip on the shoulder piece is that there's a self-image I wanted you to think of me, whether it be the clothes I wore, the shoes I had, the watch I wore, the pen I wrote with, the car I drove. I wanted you to think I was a success, but I
Yes.
didn't feel that way inside. So my self-image was what I wanted you to see, and the self-worth was the part I was fighting with. And I grew up that being wrong was painful. Dad would let you know that being wrong was not okay. And so I always fought to be right. Even if it was wrong, I wanted to be right, because the alternative to that was not enjoyable. And then I learned, I hope I'm right, but more importantly, I hope I'm fighting for the right thing, and I resented him so much for what I thought I was robbed of as a child and all the different activities around that. And I finally had a mentor that made me go through a forgiveness exercise. And then I went through several trainings. One ended up being focused seminars in Kansas City. It's a 10-day process, and it's a stripping process and a rebuilding. And I realized everything that I resented about my father was me.
Mm.
There is no, I was and people say, dude, there is no difference between you and your old man. I'm like, sure there is. Look at this. And they were right. Had I had a kid at 22 years of age, I'd have been partying hard, working hard, never home. I'd have had an affair. I mean, all the things he did, of which I did do. I just wasn't married and I didn't have 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't any different, I mean, and I was like, holy cow, man. The work ethic I have is from my grandfather and working in the family business. It was a butcher house, but I went to work and I had to do the things I did because of my dad. He was in the military. So there were certain things that had to be done in a certain way. So all of the things that I held against him, I benefited from greatly. Mm-hmm. And I tell the story about it. People go, you haven't really forgiven him. I said, man, I'm just telling you the way it was so I can tell you the way it is. And the forgiveness piece, I wasn't excusing him. I wasn't saying anything that he did was okay, but I had to do that for me so that I could release that and allow my heart to fill up with some goodness, that it isn't all about me. It's much, much more than that. And as we take a look at what forgiveness looks like, we got to forgive ourselves first. Number one. Number two is the lesson of, did this happen to you or did it happen for you? And if it happened for you, did you get the lesson or not? And if it didn't, hence the feather, I'm going to give you another lesson and another lesson, and that's the 2x4, and then another one. That may be the ton of bricks or the F-250. I mean, what do you need? And then it really dawned on me. I always thought I was better than everybody. I don't have to feel those same things. I can learn from your mistakes, Bart, and not have to repeat. What a novel concept.
Yeah.
I could learn from somebody else versus me being an egomaniac. So I think that the self-leadership side of that and the confusion that we have in the leadership world today is, do we know who we are, whose we are?
Yeah.
Do we know our values? Our values are so messed up from media and what we're supposed to do and what we're supposed to think. And our kids are being pipelined this like nobody's business from social media and interactions and what they've got going on. I mean, if you ever read Dopamine Nation, I mean, it's the dopamine, serotonin levels and the chemical aspects of what's going on in our brain. I mean, my son is addicted to video games and just getting text. And he's not even on social media. I mean, his phone won't even go to the internet. But he is so sensory sensitive to that if I gave him some alcohol or recreational drug or whatever you want to call it, man, it's going to light him up like a pinball machine. It scares me to death that they're addicted the way they are and where we could go from that. And I wasn't any different. We just didn't have that stuff. So we channeled it into booze and alcohol and drugs. I mean, you're going to find it somewhere, right? So if we don't have a purpose, if we don't have a vision of the life we'd love to live as leaders, what is our vision? And that vision has to be based upon our values. And then that becomes the filter that we have to start making decisions from. Does this check the list of my values. If it's 2 out of 3, it's a fail. Don't do it. If it's not in alignment with the vision that I have for my life, right now I'm in the big struggle of being like sugar free. I mean, it's awful. It's the worst thing I've ever tried to quit. Smoking was perhaps one of the worst ever, but no sugar is just evil. It just is not good. But I know in order for me to be the best version of myself, that's something I have to get rid of. I know that I have to get some disciplines and habits, and my values are is that, am I going to grow daily? Do I practice what I preach? And am I going to be the best example for my kids? And that's an area that I know for my health and my mental well-being, that has to change. So if that's my vision, or it's part of my vision, it's just a piece of the pie wedge. Having, Baskin Robbins ice cream cake for Lily's birthday, which was on Friday, does that lead me to it or not? Or do I get to a little sweet indulgence, or what do I end up doing? And, you get the non-fat Cool Whip and strawberries, and that only goes so far. But, I'll have a slice. And then I had a slice, and I'm like, I could eat that entire cake. And it's sitting out the freezer, and I know it's there. I know it's there. I can hear it calling my name. And our leadership today doesn't even have an idea of the vision of what they really want. They know what it ought to be, but the way it is, and they don't know how to connect the two. And last thing I'll say, and I know I rambled off on you, and you're going to go, this podcast is crazy. He didn't answer, stay on script of anything he was supposed to. But Jeff Henderson wrote in his book 4, every leader's got to ask themselves, and every salesperson and every person. I mean, if I take it back to our family level, what am I known for? And what do I want to be known for? And what's the gap between those two? Mm-hmm. And sometimes we have to start with, what do I want to be known for? And then reverse engineer it into, what am I known for? And then the ultimate test of that is, well, who did we ask to validate what we're known for? I think I'm known for this, but what's the real deal? And the leadership challenge is narrowing that gap. And I think that reigns true for politics, as well as business, as well as our family values. We just redefined them. I just had a young lady paint them for us. We're going to put them on the wall. But I said, these are our family values. Wow. And this is what we make decisions based upon these values of what we do, how we treat people, how we serve. My daughter and I are going on our first vision trip in December. She turned 16, so we're ready to rock and roll internationally with her. And she's not going to get that example from how we live day to day here. So we're going to take her to a very poverty-stricken area, wash some kids' feet, give them some tennis shoes, some soccer balls, the church that we built down there, and a few other things. But I don't want to return to old days of glory. I do want to return to values where we valued people, and we listened, and we empathized, and we tried to understand people versus I need to be heard, I want to be heard, and I want to prove you wrong at all cost. Terrible.
So your values on that you put in your home, what are those? What do they say on them?
Yeah. So, everybody goes, well, faith's one of them, right? I said, no, it isn't. Because we're still trying to live faith. The core value means it exists already. And we've got some disciplines and focus that I believe that we're very spiritual in that aspect, and we read and we study and we give praise and we pray and we want to be very much Jesus-like. But I think we have to live with passion. I think that we have to have a value of fun. We have a value of family. We have a value of loving ourselves and other people. And as you go through the values, and it's a great exercise, and we use the Maxwell leadership cards. There were the 5 levels.
Yes.
And I think one thing has a value series, and there's a variety of them, or you can find a one sheet and just circle them. But if you've gone through this exercise, have 50 of them, narrow it down to 10, then narrow it down to 5, and then narrow it down to 3. And we cheated. We narrowed it down to 3, and then we added 2 more. We couldn't keep it because fun had to be in there. I mean, we love to have fun. family, who we are, and it revolves around the catalyst piece that love had to be in there. Passion, live passionately who we are. I mean, since the kids started, they walk out the door and my daughter hates it. She despises it, but she's starting to kick it in and starting to understand it. But, you know, it doesn't matter if we had a total meltdown at breakfast. We have to say to each other, you freaking rock, and give each other a high five as they walk out the door. So the last thing you're going to hear from me is I love you and you freaking rock. Go, go, go. So, you know, I think that in I'm not hardcore on those values. I'm okay if they ebb and flow a little bit back and forth as we mature and grow. I think they'll change. Yeah. But the more loving we are, I mean, if we followed the first two commandments, love God and love one another, we just followed those two things. You don't even need 10 more.
The world's a different place.
I mean, just follow those two things.
Yep. And love ourselves in the journey. You know, we were talking about this, a couple of things as we wrap up here. But last week I interviewed a young man by the name of David Long. And David had a really, if you want to go back and listen to Keep the Change with David Long, and his story is really interesting because he had no leaders. Nobody was a role model. Like my dad, your dad. My dad was a good guy. He just wasn't a very good dad. Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great way to say that. That's great. I'm stealing that. I'll give you credit for it. I'm stealing.
And but what I love that 90-day thing because I need to hear that. Absolutely. Especially as I go into that season where I'm starting a whole new career, right? At a season where many people retire, and I'm way okay with that. But 90 days means a lot. But back to what David did, he said, I didn't have any role models. He said, if I was in business and I saw people that I didn't really agree with, that's people I learned from too. He said, because I did exactly what they did not do. Like for my dad, wasn't a very good dad. Guess what? I decided to be a really good dad. And I didn't. And so what he said was it's the people that were negative that he learned as much from, which I found fascinating. I hadn't even thought about it like that. Yeah. And so
there's more of those examples, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, really too. And I hear that a lot when I'm in recovery meetings with people. They don't have a lot of role models.
Yeah.
That's okay. If we can define ourselves about who we think we want to be, at least I love what you said, what Jeff says, what do you want to be known for? If you can see that, that vision of what I want to be known for, you've got something to walk toward.
Yeah.
And I think that's just so powerful for people in a room that are addicts and they just keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
They need to have a different vision, see themselves as being somebody that doesn't have to be that way anymore. Fantasize about being sober, fantasize about being a good father, because when you and I feed that, eventually we start getting people in our lives that manifest that, don't they? And so, I mean, we can go on and on about that, but that's just so powerful. I write down my values every day and rate them 1 to 10 about where I am, because I want to do a daily inventory as I learned in recovery, 1 day at a time, 1 second at a time.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, I've got so many nuggets from what.
So what are your top values? Not all of them, but what are your top ones?
Well, my number one is, and you mentioned core values, so I probably need to reinvent that a little bit, but I didn't become a Christian until 26 years ago. So my number one is my relationship with God.
Okay.
And you know, we talk about there's faith, family, finances, football, the 5 F's, whatever they are. But for me, right under that, it's got to be my recovery, my value of recovery.
Yeah.
And what recovery means to me is 1 day at a time and walk in freedom from my past hurts, habits, and hangups 1 moment at a time. And then my health, because if I don't have the value of health, and that doesn't always get high on the scale 1 to 10, frankly, but if I don't have that value of health, then I can't be the husband that I need to be for my wife. You know what I had on there initially? Because I've been in my past lives, I've been a lousy husband.
Yeah.
Today, I value my relationship with my wife at a level higher than any other relationship I have in my life.
Yeah.
She's my life partner. We're in here. We live together. We're empty nesters. That's everything to me. And it starts with my relationship with God, because my relationship with God means God loves her very much. And he asked me to take care of his daughter.
Yeah.
But if I don't have recovery and I don't have health, I can't take care of his daughter. Right.
Right on.
So that's 4 of them. My kids are obviously in there, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I adore them.
Freedom's
And
one of ours. That was the 5th one I think I didn't mention as well.
yeah. And you know what? I think what's interesting for me, I always chased money.
Yeah.
And especially in 6 months ago, I chased money again. And
Yeah.
I keep doing the same stuff over and over and chase money and think, wait a minute, I'm miserable. But my son Tyler said that he takes a job, and if he's growing, he'll stay. And if he's not, he'll go.
Yeah.
And,
That's
and
it.
his
What a
his
great perspective.
like
Yeah. I mean,
what's that?
it's a key perspective, right? I mean, I think in the last thing I would leave with in this discussion, I know we're long here. I've caused you to go long. I'll take
No,
responsibility for
you're
that.
good
Is
for me.
the exercise on the self-worth piece that I had to go through, and I still have to go through, and I've done it with my kids since we adopted them at 2.5 and almost 4, and I did an experiment with their kindergarten and first grade classes, and I got permission to it. And the exercise is this, and the goal is to write it 100 times and write it every day for 30 consecutive days. If you miss a day, start over. But how do you finish this sentence? I am.
Mm.
And I'll take executives or even 5-year-old kids through this. I give them 60 seconds. Complete this sentence. I am. And you have to say I am every time. I am funny. I am beautiful. I am this. And so we go through it with the kindergartners, and all of them were all positive. On a scale of 1 to 10, what are you? 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. I'll go to 6th grade. I'm a 7. I'm an 8. I go to high school. I'm a 5. I go to adults. I'm a 5. We've already let the influences of life take us from God doesn't make junk. You were created at 10. You may be performing at a 5, but you are a 10. So we had to rewire it. So I am loved. I am loving. I am inspired. I'm inspiring. I am worthy. I am forgiving. I am forgiven. I am beautiful. I am healthy. I'm whatever the case might be. And if you repeat the word, repeat it. And some people, and most people that I ask to complete this in 60 seconds can only name 5 or 6 things. And then I ask them to do it again, 60 seconds. Now, stand the people up that love you the most. Your mom, if you had a great relationship with a parent, or whoever comes to mind, your spouse, your significant other, your best coach in life, your best teacher in life. And if I ask them, Bart is. But instead, you have to say, I am again. Complete the sentence if you were speaking from the 5 most influential people in life. And they'll come up with 20 things. They'll come up with 25 things.
Dude, that's so good.
Because when we see ourselves through the eyes and the lens of others, we see something totally different than whenever we're staring ourselves in the face, in the mirror. So if there was anybody listening to this, if you just take a piece of paper and start it today and go as long as you can. And then when you run out, take a deep breath and write again. I am. And you're going to have I am written every time. Complete that sentence. And if it's I am fat, I am ugly, I am unsuccessful, I am unhappy, I am poor, you got to strike that one out and write the reverse of it. And it isn't that we're trying to ignore that, because the belief system is up until now, I may have agreed with that, but that's not me today. My physical exterior may look that way, but internally, I am powerful, I am loved, I am forgiven, and I am gracious, and I am willing, I am changing, I am growing. And redefine that starting today. And over the next 30 days, you read that list every day. And then if you're just curious, repeat it for another 30 days. And then repeat it for another 30 days and see what happens.
That's so good. You know what? I am honored to have spent some time with you, buddy. I really am. That was so good. So good. You know, I say this frankly a lot to my friends that I get to meet on this podcast. I say, man, you got to come back. Well, you've got to come back.
Be more laser focused next time. We'll one item and we'll just drill down on one thing instead of 20.
That was you know what? The nuggets are what we all needed to hear. It was absolutely perfect. And thank you so much. If somebody wants to get a hold of Mark Mcauliffe, how do they do that?
The easiest way is on Facebook or LinkedIn. Mark Mcauliffe, or you can see the Mcauliffe group on Facebook. But Mark Mcauliffe is what you're going to look for on Facebook, and you're going to look for it on LinkedIn. You'll see a picture of me, I think, on stage with my hand in the air at a Maxwell event, and that's on Facebook. And then if you run across on LinkedIn and just spelling the name MC capital AULIFFE, that's me.
All right, and you just changed the world by this time we spent together. You really did. And somebody's going to hear this and say, whoa, I'm reaching out to that guy. By the way, please subscribe if you haven't done so. Give us some feedback either on LinkedIn or anywhere else that you can give us some feedback. We'd appreciate it. And if you want those leadership cards, go ahead and hit me up either on LinkedIn, Facebook, and I will send them to you complimentary. The first 20 people that hit me up for that, I'm going to give you those leadership value cards. Those are powerful. It's a game changer. And I think that talk about self-awareness, that'll open up some eyes and give you a whole new vision of who you are, which is where the freedom comes from. Thank you, my friend, Mark Mcauliffe. God bless you, brother.
Yep. Love you, man. Thanks so much.
Love you, man. Talk to you soon.
Yep. All the best.